Welcome everybody who's just joined us, and my clock has now ticked over to 3 o'clock, so we're going to make a start. So good afternoon, and thank you everybody for joining us this afternoon. This is a little bit of a change off my usual path to be talking about emotional intelligence. I'm joined this afternoon by Scott. Scott is an emotional intelligence expert, and I'm going to allow him to introduce himself and tell us a little bit more about what he does. Welcome, Scott.
Well, thank you very much indeed. And it's emotional intelligence is about how we manage ourselves, our focus, our communication, and how we manage our relationships with others. So it doesn't replace technical competence or expertise, it partners it. An easy way to figure out emotional intelligence is if you've ever been to a medical doctor and they've said, how can I help? Then all they've done is processed you. They might have been missing a little bit of empathy. If you've ever opened a bank statement and realised, my goodness, I'm in the brown again, when you thought you had plenty, that is reality testing. And all these things cause emotions, and emotions cause moods. And it's not about having high emotional intelligence or low emotional intelligence, it's having balance, because it's 15 specific competencies, not all of which we'll explore today, but we'll explore a few if your guests are happy to do so.
Yeah, I'm sure they are, mate. I'm sure they are. I'll just let everybody know that they're a little bit of housekeeping. They're all in listen. Everybody's in listen-only mode, apart from you and me. If anybody wants to ask a question, feel free to stick it in the chat or the Q&A box, and I'll stop you as we're going along just to answer any questions that anybody's got. So,
absolutely. Please be aware, everybody, including Stu. Stu kind of knows this, but because I appear to be quite passionate about this subject and making emotional intelligence so it's used intelligently, I do have what's called, I call, a soapbox moment. So if I have a soapbox moment, stop me. Because I want to deliver that self-awareness, even I know this. I want to deliver as much value as I can for you, with you, rather than just talk. Because that's not learning, is it? That's just politely listening. So
we've got. Thank you for that. And you having a soapbox moment is unheard of, isn't it?
You've not read the feedback, have you, mate?
So, in the last week, there's been a lot of panic, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of worry with people, a lot of anxiety. I know a lot of the phone calls I've taken have just been about people just generally worried what's going to happen and where to go from. Some people are extremely pessimistic about the future. Some are actually thinking that I'm not thinking there's going to anything good come out of this, but they're quite optimistic about their path on the way through it. I know you talk a lot about optimism and pessimism and things like that. What's your thought?
Yorkshireman, it's more pessimistic than optimistic. But, yeah, a couple of things. If people are panicking or worried, it demonstrates that they care, that they actually give a monkeys, first off. So it's a good thing. And what's going to happen as well as what's not going to happen. Well, what's going to happen is more uncertainty. There's likely to be more confinement from what we hear from government. And bearing in mind, if you were in prison, or me, what's the biggest punishment an inmate can have if they misbehave? Solitary confinement. They remove you from everyone else. And the brain doesn't like that. Some people, I occasionally love it because I spend all week around people. Then I've got a 4-year-old daughter that never stops. Sometimes I want a bit of peace and quiet. But that's not confinement. So it's not just what is going to happen, it's what's not going to happen. Will existing or potential customers be signing those contracts? Possibly not. Why? Because they don't know what's going to happen either. So this element of uncertainty, we catch emotions from each other. We really do. And just yesterday, a group in Germany, their live chat was, what are you open to doing to help you balance your emotional well-being more effectively? 11 people. Now, there were over 100 people on the call. 11 people very quickly put, stop watching the news all day. Because all it does, the brain keeps score. The brain keeps score and it goes, there's another bit of bad, there's another bit of bad. Mind you, the 6 o'clock news and the 10 o'clock news are what reported at 9 o'clock, but it's still there. And all it does when the brain gets stressed is it magnifies on what it doesn't want. And what it doesn't want is uncertainty. What it doesn't want is emotional pain. This is a soapbox moment, stop me. What it doesn't want is that bank account dropping down where we think, my goodness, it's not just my business that's suffering. I'm suffering because I can do nothing. And the brain, not just us, the brain doesn't want to feel helpless. And we do not like losing. But we don't, worse than that, we don't like losing badly. And this is one of those losing badly moments. So stress tolerance and reality testing are very key competencies to look at in terms of balancing healthy pessimism with healthy optimism. Because there's a pessimist will say, it's a beautiful blue sky, there's a cloud over there. Yeah, there's just one, but there's a big blue sky. We'll have a picnic. Well, it's going to rain at 3:00. And the pessimistic part of the brain, which is there to keep us safe, the brain's top priority is survival, self-preservation. Anything above that's a bonus, even if it's a bit of a naff bonus. The brain is so busy trying to protect them. This won't work. That's never going to work. I've never been good at technology. I'm a Capricorn. I've heard that from a client. What? 2 and 2, 15. And as you know, from your experience, 2 and 2 is not 15. But the brain tries to make sense of things, and it makes up stories. On the other side, if you ever meet someone, and I really hope you don't, that says, I'm forever optimistic, run. Run, because they don't have any counterbalance for always seeing the positive. This could work. Let's invest there. Let's try and spend a few £1,000 on AdWords. Let's do this over here. And they're so busy wanting to achieve, to succeed, to improve, to enhance, and all these things, that they don't have a realistic pessimistic person to rein them in a bit. They don't have that seatbelt. So it's good to be pessimistic. It's good to be optimistic. The pessimist will tend to look for the worst case scenario and stay there. The blind optimist will say, this is the best case scenario. This is what we're going for, people. Follow me. And no one's following. Or they're doing it by duty and obligation. But look at worst case, look at best case, and look at realistic case, likely case scenario.
Is there something we can do to put us into that realism then, if we're at one end of the spectrum, or are there some techniques we can use? Or
absolutely. If you're overly optimistic, if you're highly optimistic, it's a great place to start, but it can be a very dangerous place to end. If you are a sole trader, whether of a limited company or otherwise, find someone that you trust to mismatch your thinking. Mismatch your thinking. So if I'm saying to you, Stu, I think my company should invest in exporting because there's nothing happening in the UK. I think we should go to parts of Africa. And you say, well, that's great, Scott, but first of all, it's a very poor area of the world. And second, have you seen African nations, and this is fact, are some of the poorest payers anywhere on earth? Well, Stu, but I'm going to meet... No, Scott, stop. It's not bringing people down. It's not, peeing on the parade. It's saying, pay attention because something else is going on here. If you've got someone that you trust, that to give you some feedback, say, this is what I'm thinking, this is why I'm thinking it, and this is the value I think it's going to deliver. Tell me why it wouldn't work, and then be quiet. Because if we're overly optimistic, we say, tell me why it wouldn't work, and you start telling me why it wouldn't work, oh, I gave him permission to speak up, didn't I? Bloody hell, I wish he'd stop. All right, don't go overboard. But we've got to give people permission to share feedback. And sometimes the best people, away from numbers, of course, because 2 and 2 is 4. If it's a different perspective we want, we've got to be open to receiving it because it's done with good intention. If someone's overly pessimistic, don't stick them in a corner. You can ask, well, when will this ever end? I don't know, but it's at least 3 weeks. According to reports, chunk things down. It's one big lump of information. Coronavirus, now called COVID-19, which has stopped people buying, stopped people, I can't sell, and then I've got this to do, I've got that to pay. HMRC give me a bit of leeway, but when is it going to end? That is one big bunch of information. HMRC give leeway for at least 3 months. Wonderful, I can park that. No one's buying. Well, that's a global belief that no one's buying, so I shouldn't even bother. No.
Yeah.
No. Perhaps people are buying from those people that are still caring to offer what they offer and deliver value. And as I shared with you just before we started, one program that we have is how to manage remote teams more successfully. It's one of our worst sellers day to day. And it's been on the website for over 10 years. We've had about 10 bookings. In the last week, we've had 24 people inquire. Why? Because it's not being all things to everyone. It's saying at some point people might find value, and my goodness, are they now?
Well, on that, you've led that quite nicely into my next question, Scott, because I want to talk about teams.
Okay. I'm not, no.
Most people on the call this afternoon are trying to manage a remote team at the moment. Everybody working from home. So let's go down that route a little bit and just say what are. I'm sort of guessing again. There's a lot of worry about managing a remote team. There's keeping the guys motivated. There's potential communication issues and things dropping down gaps or miscommunication. There's I don't know if there's any concern about people getting stuff done, not getting stuff done, keeping focused, all that type of thing. So I think there's probably a fair bit to explore there.
Yeah, well, a couple of things. Probably a couple of hundred things if you don't stop me. First of all, there's an audio program available, complimentary to the people on the call, and it wasn't designed for what's happening now. I recorded it about 6 years ago, but the principles remain the same about communication and clarifying standards and boundaries and decision making. So I'll share that with you, and if you want to share it with your guests on this call, they're very welcome to use it.
Thank you.
With win-win in mind, if anyone does listen to it and get value, buy a big issue when they can start selling again. That would be a win-win. So in terms of communication, it's if a leader or a business owner has gone from having the relative safety of having people around her or him in the office, it provides an opportunity to check in regularly. Just informally. How are you doing? Anything you want from me? How is that progressing to a deadline? Wonderful. But when it's done remotely, it can feel for the recipient of the communication, why are you checking up on me again? Don't you trust me to do what I'm supposed to be doing? I'm on with it. I keep getting emails because people are emailing, and now you're calling me? And it can lead to disengagement, emotional disengagement, because people think, first of all, I'm isolated. Secondly, there's no one I can speak with. Thirdly, I can't go for a coffee break and let off steam or just have a chat with someone. And fourthly, my boss is now, it appears that he or she doesn't trust me. No. Unless it's the case, but I hope not. But this is why having a high trust relationship with clear boundaries and clarity on what that person or those people can do and shouldn't do, what they're expected to do and what they're expected to avoid doing, and what the minimum performance standard is, not just in terms of productivity, but getting things right first time on time. So these clients that you're actually serving during these difficult times know that even when push comes to shove, the worst scenario happens, you're a steady pair of hands that are worth trusting.
Okay. So clear boundaries sounds like number one.
Clear boundaries. And a wonderful way to do that is a simple question. It had to be simple. I made it up. Tell me, as we work remotely, what are one or two things you'd really appreciate from me over the next 10 days in terms of support, in terms of communication, in terms of checking in with me? What we don't want to say is, Stu, tell me, as you're working from home, what do you need from me over the next 10 days? Because if we say, what do you need from me, it makes that other person's brain think, I'm being needy.
Okay. Yeah, so language uniform.
It's just a word. Say, what would you welcome from me over the next 10 days? And if you say, I don't know, that's a starting point. Well, I've got 15 ideas here. No. So let's catch up at 12 tomorrow, just before lunch. And I've got a few ideas, but I'd really welcome yours first, because I want to ensure you're supported. I want to feel that you're encouraged. And also, I want both of us to be able to get the work done that we've been trusted and paid and expected to do. 12 tomorrow. And have one or two yourself, but invite them to go first. The pattern is, I have a few ideas. I'd really welcome yours first. Well, I've got one. Great. Your one, my one, at least we've got two. One more thing. Every brain can think of one more thing. Every brain can think of one more thing. And it chunks it down. Remember I mentioned that, chunking things down?
Yep.
It does that. Oh, for everyone listening in and joining in a moment, this is the interactive part where I invite you to join in and you just stare at the computer thinking, I can't believe he just asked me to do that. Keep breathing, Stu. wherever you are, whatever you're doing, change 33 things about your appearance currently. If you're wearing shorts, odd socks, a shirt, full suit, change 33 things. Okay, don't sign off the call just yet. Is it a bit overwhelming?
Yeah.
If you've actually tried doing it, because I can't see you. But this is where the brain gets one bit of big information. Hey, 33, that's stupid. I don't even know the guy. This emotional intelligence, 33 things. But take that simple request, foolish request, and take that to running a business, leading a team, delivering what we're supposed to be delivering. One big bunch of information. But if I say change one thing, there's 33 things to go through, but change one thing at a time. You could move your spectacles, you could move your headphones, you could gel your hair because it looks like you're far better than mine. You could undo a button. 33 things, ridiculous. One thing at a time, absolutely. And this, if we're managing remote teams and enabling them and encouraging them and equipping them to do wonderful things, not just get the job done, do wonderful things, and ideally enjoy the journey as well, as much as they can in these changed circumstances. Let's just ask one or two things at a time, because anyone can do one or two things.
Right, so we don't give them big lists of stuff to do. Are we sort of suggesting then that it's better to sort of maybe have more, certainly to have regular interactions, maybe daily or something like that, and just ask them to do a couple of things a day rather than say at the beginning of the week, I want those 10 things doing by Friday. Yeah.
By Friday, I'm going to struggle to get to Wednesday. Friday is too far away, especially when we're isolated. And we can ask, as long as your colleague or colleagues know what they're being trusted to do, because you brief them correctly and accurately. I'll send you that audio through as well, how to delegate so people actually understand what to do as well. Put it next to everyone's Taylor Swift album. Put little old me, delegation and manage remote teams. But if we chunk it down, say, okay, on Mr. or Mrs. X's client project, you know that A and B need doing. What are your thoughts on how you can get that done within the next 4 hours? Because if we say by the end of the day, that can allow the brain to drift, and the brain can drift. Could go to the biscuit tin, go for a walk, and because we need a break. But it's estimate, is that 4 hours? What do you think? And if they say 4 hours, they've chunked it down in their own mind that it's 4 hours, and they'll focus on doing it in 4 hours. If we say by the end of the week, I want that website completed, I want that client's VAT return done. Well, there's so many interruptions and distractions, some self-imposed and some environmental imposed, that can happen. And if we say use your calendar, chunk down 30 minutes on a Monday morning, 10 till 10:30, Monday afternoon 2 till 2:30, and then the brain can take small chunks and make little bits of progress. That little bit of progress delivers even more value. Just a thought.
Okay, so I'm making notes here. I'm writing some of these down. So I've got so far clarity, small, regular chunks of work. What about, is there anything else that we'd add to that list, first of all, before I ask you the next question?
Clarity on boundaries, decision-making, activities to be undertaken, clarity on permissions in the relationship, because just because you get on really well when you're in the same office, bumps are more likely to happen when we're isolated. Well, Stu, that's not what I asked you to do. Well, Scott, that's what I heard you say. Well, clearly you weren't listening. And I can't come around and give you a roasting. Not that we'd want to do that. But in times such as these, the emotional stability can struggle a bit. Emotions are heightened because awareness is heightened of risk, of fear, of uncertainty. So it's about permissions in the relationship. If you work for me, which clearly you don't, or if I work for you, as an employee, I'd want to understand, dare I speak my truth to power? If I am struggling emotionally, if I am struggling with progress, am I safe in telling you that I'm struggling? Because who wants to admit to the boss that they're not doing as wonderfully well as you'd hoped or expected?
That's probably always been a difficult part in the employer-employee relationship, hasn't it? That establishing trust and everything. But it's probably more. It's probably even more important now, I guess, because you don't have as many visual cues as you do when everybody's in the office. it's very easily to spot somebody, I guess, who's disengaged in an officer who's going through a tough time, or whatever it is. But when you've got them maybe for a very quick call, or you're communicating them through them via email or Slack or Teams or whatever tool you're using, and it's more written word, it's probably quite hard to pick up on those those physical cues that you normally get. Have you got some tips for how we just I don't know, I guess not create the trust, because you can't, it's going to be very difficult to create it, but how we pick up on that sort of stuff and what we watch out for and the right questions to ask our team just to check in with them, make sure they are.
Absolutely. I think if everyone's up for it, they're going to be buying at least 3 big issues, because I've got an audio, Trust or Bust, 10 ways to develop, maintain and nourish high trust relationships. I never did get to number 1 on iTunes. I don't think I've even got on iTunes, to be honest. But it is this thing about what do we rely on each other for? Not just what do we expect from each other. If I'm your own player, I want paying for doing a good job. It's what can we rely on each other for? And speaking truth to power is dangerous, because it comes with consequences. And usually people don't see the positive side. It's a bit like giving bad news to the boss is like telling a new parent they've got an ugly baby. You can call your own ambulance. But it's, as a leader, and it's not just about leading by example and all that tosh, it's leading with emotions, because emotions enable or disable our ability to have people want to follow us. When people follow us by choice rather than obligation or duty, that's where we have that relationship where we can say almost anything to each other, because we know the intention's honourable. We know we're trying to be helpful. So if you want to say to your colleagues, not on a group call, but it's best on one-to-one, is what I'm really relying on you for is candid feedback. If something's not going to plan, don't say if something's going belly up or going other parts of your body up. If something's not quite going to plan, pick up the phone and let me know. Please, would you do that? And then just go quiet. Please, would you do that? We don't say, is that okay with you? Rabbit in headlights. Please, would you do that? And that engages the amygdala, the emotional mission control of the brain. That goes, he or she really means it. I'm safe. And you can say, and if I feel similar or same, may I give you a call and share my concern with you? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Rather than, it's really straightforward, it's really simple, it's often overlooked or completely forgotten about, because we should know these things. So helping people know they can speak their truth, as long as it's constructive, as long as it's there to help rather than hurt, and as long as it's not used as a get out of jail card for not performing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is a good way. I also find it it's a little bit different from when you're working in the office. It's also very easy to say good things to people and sort of say, oh, well done, or nice job, or whatever. Again, this is completely different. There's more of I guess there's more of an effort needed. Maybe it's got to be more of a deliberate, measured thing to actually congratulate somebody and tell them they're doing a good job. But I'm guessing they need to hear it more than ever now.
Yeah, and perhaps it's not even effort; it's just attention.
Yeah, attention. Okay.
If the brain's trying so hard not to fail, not to screw up, not to ruin what you've built, it can forget. Again, it magnifies on, right, how do I sort this? What do I do with that? What do I do with this? Oh, people should know they're valued anyway. No. Some people, if you compliment them openly, they'll go, oh, for goodness sake, why do that? Because they don't want it. But they will a little post-it note on the desk saying, thanks for staying late, coming in early. That project's been finished and it's gone great. A little note. So bearing in mind, I don't know if you can claim this through the business, but there's Moonpig, there's Funky Pigeon. Don't send a thank you card or a well done card for the sake of it, because it's quite shallow and people will pick up on it. They just want me to get the next project done. No, send something that's timely. If something's about to be done brilliantly, just have your Funky Pigeon or whatever Moonpig account open. Or if you've got cards, you can still go and post a letter. Do something. But catch people doing things right. And perhaps it is now more than ever because other people's attention is magnified on, am I going to keep my job? Am I going to be able to pay the mortgage? Am I going to go to my own leaving do next week? We don't know. But what we do know is and Harvard Business School at Harvard University, I didn't study there, I just read it. Emotionally engaged employees deliver on average 40% more value for an organisation than those that are neither engaged nor disengaged. And the biggest emotionally engaged, is, am I connected with my job? Is my work meaningful?
That's a big one.
So, for example, with you and your colleagues, is it I do VAT returns and corporation tax, or I help businesses pay less tax legally and retain more profit that they can use, give them more freedom? If it's a design agency, do I decorate people's houses, or do I help them improve the value of their property for when they want to sell? It could be anything. But is my work meaningful? Is it fulfilling? Even when I have a bad day, is it not been that bad I don't want to go in tomorrow? The next biggest engager is the relationship between the employee and their boss, the person that leads them.
Yep.
Does he or she invite me to speak my truth and stick around to hear what I've got to say? Do they catch me doing things right, as well as understandably give me a bit of a roasting when I make a commitment and don't keep it? So if we're going to help, it's not for us to engage people, it's for us to help them want to be engaged. Yeah. And that's completely different. Do a Loom video. Look, people, this is how the situation is. I'm not going to say it's all smelling of roses. I'm not going to say it's smelling of all the bad stuff either. Here's the reality. A, B, C, D. If we do this, this is likely to achieve this. If we don't do anything, it's likely to achieve that. What are your thoughts on how we can get there? Come on, put your comments in. And people often wait for someone to go first. They often wait for someone to go first, which is fine, because they don't want their idea to feel stupid. But invite them. Well, the boss isn't always the best thinker. The boss isn't always the best thinker.
Never the best thinker. No, not never, but often the case.
I don't admitting things.
In the spirits of somebody going first, I'm just going to ask everybody who's on the call, are there any questions that you wanted to ask about managing teams? If you do, stick them in that chat box now, because we haven't got any questions coming through yet. So stick them in that chat box, and we'll come back to those in a minute. Is there anything else that we want to say on teams at the moment, Scott?
I think that would do for now. I will send through those 3 audios for you. I'll do that later today. And if you want to share them with everyone here, that's fine by me. May I just ask a question for people to share with you? Over the last 10 days, what are the 3... Now, don't overthink this. Go with a gut response. Oh, sorry, blokes have gut response. Females have intuition, I believe. In terms of, it's all the same thing. It's all the same. Someone joked with me, don't we have intuition? It's okay. What are the 3 major emotions you've encountered over the last 10 days? Please share your thoughts with Stu. Be specific. Just in one word. Fear, anxiety, hope.
Yep.
Wonderful. Thank you, Bryony. Fear, anxiety, hope. Advance, vulnerability. Wonderful. Thank you, Kay. Now, if you've not responded yet, I invite you to help everyone else learn with you. Because the more you share with us here, frustration, thank you, Amit, the more you share with us, the more I can share with you that may be of value. Stress, thank you, Roger. Inspiration, wonderful. Optimistic, fantastic. What we're after is a realistic optimist. Humility, wonderful. Fantastic. So if you've got...
We've got another one on the Q&A of anxiety, worry, and optimism.
Yeah. Improvising. That's flexibility, improvising, I think, EQ-wise. Now, if people are still sharing, that's fantastic. Where those 3, or however few or how many you shared, what was the trigger that caused them? What was the trigger? Because if we're going to manage stress more effectively, understanding what blooming trigger caused it is the first thing. And that relates to healthy self-awareness. If it was anxiety, someone put inspiration in there. Now, COVID-19 was outside of you. Emotions aren't created. They're influenced by what's outside of us, but they're not created. But yeah, that's outside as well. Uncertainty about what, Roger? Lack of work, which causes what? Other reaction in the news? Yeah, okay. Right, so the future, okay, and this is it. Thank you, Roger. This is the point where our frustration, our anxiety, our stress, our worry, we've already projected it forward. It's already in here. Now, I mentioned earlier, the brain keeps score. On average, a normal functioning brain, adult brain, has between 40 and 60,000 thoughts each and every day. Now, in 1,440 minutes or so, we have 40 to 60,000 thoughts, and neuroscience tells us that about 90% are on autopilot because we can't think of everything. Now, if you took some of these, the anxiety, the stress, the worry, and even the inspiration, and put a couple more percent either in identifying the trigger points inside that are causing them, as well as being aware of the external influences, the news, COVID-19. I don't know what COVID-19 is. It cannot cause me worry. It cannot cause me inspiration. Unless I create a meaning that happening is resulting in something bad or unfavorable or stressful that I don't want, that is causing my emotion. It's not true. If we do that, well, it's not fact. If we do that, we hand over how we choose to respond, how we choose to react, and how we choose to operate to something that perhaps none of us, especially me, don't quite understand. We may understand it's having an impact because people have stopped making decisions to buy, stopped making decisions to supply, whatever it may be. And that all comes. And if it's lack of work, one person kindly put lack of work, and that lack of work causes what? Uncertainty. Regarding what? Paying bills? Regarding what? Looking after myself and loved ones? Which causes what? Fears of what does the future hold? So it's not COVID-19. However serious the situation is, it's really serious. It doesn't cause our emotions. It can influence a stress reaction. Okay. And stress, anxiety, and frustration. Frustration can be a great starting point because sometimes we can get so peeved off that frustration goes, I've had enough of this. And we go and do something wonderful. You know? We're going to do something absolutely fantastic that we never thought of until that level of frustration reached that threshold where enough's enough, I'm off. I'm going to do something. Hope is a great place to start, but hope deserves to be balanced with reality testing and realistic optimism. And if you don't yet have that, or even if you do, find someone that can mismatch your thinking. And if you've got fundamentally flawed ideas, they can tell you what they are and help you. If you've got really good ideas, they can help you refine and improve them. But the brain cannot operate 40 to 60,000 thoughts a day. The brain didn't come with an owner's manual. It cannot operate anywhere near optimally and nowhere near effectively if the main focus each and every day becomes this snowball effect of anxiety with a little bit of hope and inspiration, but fear, upset, or helplessness.
So what about coping strategies then, Scott?
Wonderful. Stress tolerance. Go on, please.
No, I was going to say, was that the next logical place to go?
It was. Great minds, Stu, great minds. It's a coping strategy. Stress is a signal. Emotions are signals that are to get us to pay attention. Now, pressure, for example. Pressure is something that is about to be over pretty quickly. Pressure is very brief. It can be walking across the road, checking our iPhones, someone beeps their horn on the car because and it's fight, flight or freeze, but that was okay. It can be, I've got to call this prospect. I hope they say yes to that proposal, but I don't know if they're going to, so I tell you what, I won't. Oh no, I'll just get it over with. Oh, you want to do it? Wonderful. That pressure is very brief. Usain Bolt said many years ago, I don't know why people, when they're racing me, feel so much pressure and stress. I feel pressure 10 seconds before we start, and it's over within 10 seconds. Stress So their pressure could turn to stress that, oh, I'll try not to lose as badly as I did last time. Rather than going out to win, they're going out not to lose.
Yep.
Very different physiological response. And that's the last time I use a big word that I can't say on this call. But also in terms of coping strategies, understanding what is the stress trigger that's causing this. For example, it could be opening a bank. Oh, this letter's from the bank. We open it. I thought it was bad news. Bit of pressure, it's gone. It could be that stress, client A, client B, client C are all delaying. Now, the stress is caused when we think there's such an element of emotional overwhelm that we don't have sufficient capacity here, or financial resources or people resources to deal with what's coming at us. And it is coming at us. It really is. It's when something feels or actually is beyond our control or influence. That's when stress snowballs. 40 to 60,000 thoughts, 90% on autopilot. What's going to happen? The brain will start throwing out adrenaline and cortisol that are there when it was prehistoric man and woman chasing dinosaurs to try and eat them. Is it going to eat me or can I eat it? Survival. What we want to balance is, first of all, be aware of this. It's that client is not progressing with the next project. Oh my goodness, what's going to happen? What about if we just took the word yet?
Yeah, okay.
They're not progressing with it yet. That chunks it down in the brain. How can I help them commit or at least discuss when they will progress? That is, we're not reactive, we're actually active. The stress response is, and we had one a couple of weeks ago, and it was a very wonderful client, and a 5-figure project, Scott, because of what's happening, and we work in an area that has to be very clearly sanitized, we won't be progressing with this. I could have gone, oh my goodness, there's the end of year figures. And well, there's the end of year figures. Let's see, picked up the phone, said to the client, when might you want to do this? August at the very latest, if everything changes, but send me the contract anyway. We'll get it sorted. Now, that's gone from potential stress to pressure to an element of certainty.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to be progressing with this yet.
Yeah.
Chunk that down. Also, notice when the stress is about to begin happening. I know that I feel pressure when, tomorrow I've got a second call with a global consultancy and it's Asia and Pacific. And these are real top performing global consultants. And I feel pressure when I think, how the heck can I connect with all these people and help them want to enjoy learning with me? But that pressure gets me to pay attention, but it enables me because I stop it. And you can do a coping strategy that works is, enough, let's move on. That's what I do. Enough, let's move on. And that is like closing off a program on your computer. If you've got a Mac, it's the beach ball of doom. That it's got so many programs open, so many open loops, that it goes, I don't know what to do next. And I think, I'll push the space bar, see what happens. What do you do that for? Now I've got another thing to think about before I can think about these other things that I was supposed to be thinking about. Just shut me down. That, okay, move on. That's my shutting down. And it just chunks it off in my wonderful old brain of enough's enough. Because there has to be a time, even when things are going wonderfully well, but especially when things aren't as we'd hoped, planned for, expected, where they're not going to plan, where we deserve and need to close off this wonderful brain and start focusing it rather than letting it focus us. Another strategy is, if you can safely go for a walk, put your phone down, just go and enjoy nature. Another way to do it is if you are a director of a family firm or even a family partnership, there's this thing going around at the minute, it's okay to not be okay. And it was largely designed to get men talking, and there's lots of good things happening in that arena, there really are. So why is it 3 of my clients have told me they felt suicidal over the past 12 months? Because they were directors of family businesses, 2 in construction, 1 elsewhere, that said, I can't tell my wife that if we don't retain this contract, the house is going. What's she going to think? Now, for me to say, well, she's your wife, come on, she married you for better, for worse. No. But this is the thing about having a high trust relationship where you can speak truth, and truth isn't always to power, it's to the partners. And truth is to self. I'm really struggling here. What with? All of it? Some of it? One chunk of it? Well, the one chunk I'm really struggling with is the uncertainty around this particular project or this particular client. Well, if you know you're struggling with it, stick it on a post-it note, or if you've got problems as big as mine, that big. But write something down. Get it out of your head. Get it out of your head, because when it gets on paper, it gives us a little bit of distance. And then come up with, these are 3 things I'm open to trying. These are 3 things. Any brain can think of 1 or 2 things. Let's be greedy and go for 3. These are 3 things I'm open to giving a go. Helping my husband, wife, significant other, cat understand. I'd really appreciate their understanding. Because the pressure cooker has to stop at some point.
I think there's going to be, have to be a lot of open conversations over the next few weeks with everybody in the house, with significant others and kids and all the rest of it. And it's a very unusual circumstance for us all to be in, is at that sort of, small space all the time, 24/7 with no outlets and things, isn't it? So
Absolutely. And it can feel even more pressured. And a good thing to consider at any time, perhaps especially now, is there's been challenges before that we may have faced and they seemed insurmountable. How the heck am I going to get through this? What's going to happen? But we're still here.
We always do.
We got through it. And we do. Because I, in the interest of transparency, about 3 years ago, I had a medical condition that forced me not to be able to speak. And don't Q&A and say, we see that as a blessing. That'd be awkward. But I couldn't speak. And bearing in mind someone that speaks and to communicate and educate and help people learn what was happening. Well, financially, couldn't bring much in. And bearing in mind I had a new baby girl at that point, it was, my goodness, what am I going to do? But eventually, and with your support and some other people's support as well, got things down and prioritised and chunked things down so it wasn't one big bowl. And whilst I know this stuff, I'm not going through it with you, but I have things to deal with as well. It's not all bright and rosy in the garden. There's stuff to deal with, but we deal with it in small chunks. And if you don't wish to speak with your partner, significant other, or indeed the cat, find someone that you're open to discussing it with. Get it out of your head. You still own it. You still own getting the solution. But often, not always, but often, someone else can give you a different perspective, or just listen because they want to understand, rather than listen and say, well, actually, Scott, if you did this, no, I don't want that. Don't want that.
So have you got, just if anybody's got any questions, by the way, now is the time to get them in, because I've just got one final question for you, Scott, which is, what have you got 3 maybe top tips for sort of dealing with, I'm going to use the word isolation, but I think you know what I mean. I think it's that, self-care type stuff. 3 top tips for that self-care.
Yeah. In terms of self-care, the wonderful thing of a phone can do wonders. First of all, check in with yourself 3 times a day, at least. When you're about to start your day, what emotional state am I in? On a scale of 0 to 10, 0 being, I should have stayed in bed, it's not worth trying. 10 is, it's going to be ballistically wonderful, which deserves a bit of attention, reality testing. 5 is, it's not that bad, it's not that good. With that brief overview, how would you get yourself to 8? how would you get yourself from, if you said 6 or 7, how would you get yourself to an 8? If you said 8, what would get you to a 9? Things that work for me are, how can I enjoy my day? Well, I can go for a walk in the morning before anyone's up and about, and that's wonderful. I can focus on what I really appreciate. What I really appreciate is taking care of my family. What I really appreciate is friends that I can rely on, and they can rely on me to have a good chat and a catch up. What I also want to enjoy is, can I write something today or produce something today that someone may find useful? What else can I do? Well, I can't go swimming. I can't go to the gym. What can I do? I'll get this app and do some press-ups. There's always something to do. I'll put some classical music on because I don't enjoy it, but I might just get to enjoy it. Do something different. 9 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 4 o'clock. For self-care as well, what value do I want to achieve? What value do I want to create today, rather than just what do I need to get done today? What do I need to get done? Even the word need creates necessity. What value do I want to create today? Well, I want to develop greater trust with that client, that prospective client. I want to help my staff know that they're appreciated. I want them to know that individually and collectively they can speak their truth to me. That's self-care. In terms of seeing things as they really are, not worse than they are, not better than they are. Just checking on the reality. A wonderful thing, especially if you've got access to Sky or something else, is there's a comedy channel. Laughing changes the chemicals that the brain secretes. And it doesn't change what's happening out there, but it does help change what's happening in here. And what we're after is balance, healthy balance. We know there's crap going on. What can I do about it? I can't do a thing about COVID-19 apart from use tissues and hand sanitizer and don't stand within 2 meters. Beyond that, I can do nothing. But what I can do is enjoy my day, or focus on how I can make tomorrow a better day than today. I can write something on LinkedIn and share a thought. I can call a client and say, look, what are 1 or 2 things your colleagues might appreciate from me? And it's happened. Because the more we contribute, in the good times as well as in these difficult times as well, the more we contribute when times are good, the more people are likely to want us to come back when times recover. It's not nailed on guaranteed, but when we deliver so much value, not because we want something back, but because we do it with kindness, competence, and a big heart, people tend to want to come back.
We have got one question in. What's your view on tools like meditation to shift out of fight, flight, and create more headspace, especially in close quarters?
Wonderful. Can I just clarify, close quarters with others? Is it family or colleagues or other?
Doesn't say, it just says ... So okay. Brian, if you want to fill that missing, if you want to answer that.
So meditation.
Self-isolation, she's added.
Thank you. Meditation can be a wonderful thing because it gets the brain to slow down. Mindfulness, which is an offshoot of emotional intelligence, can also be really good because it gets our brain to slow down a bit, 40 to 60,000. If you can get it down to 25,000 for 10 minutes, that's blooming amazing. It's wonderful. And it's a wonderful way to avoid going to the fridge and getting a beer as well. No accusation there, Brian, I promise you. But it's when our brain is used to doing all these things, then it goes, I can't afford to slow down. If I slow down, things will stop. No, that's the ego. That's the self-preservation, survival mentality. Brian, I think meditation is a wonderful thing. It's best done guided. But if you go on YouTube, there's some wonderful, even on Prime Video, if you've got Prime, there's some wonderful yoga and meditation little programs on there that can guide you. If you do it already, wonderful, but it can be a wonderful way. It doesn't change what's happening out there, but it helps to create balance in this wonderful thing called the brain. So I endorse it, really do.
Fantastic. We haven't got any more questions in, Scott, so I'm going to thank you for coming along. I hope everybody on the call found that valuable and got some tips out of it. I've written down 3 or 4 things that have occurred to me during this call.
I said about 57.
Well, you did say about 57, but Thankfully, I've recorded it so I can listen. I can listen later on.
Wonderful. May I share a thought before we go? This is the thing about having. Thank you for your thank you. Wonderful. Before you go, people, in 2003, there's a golf competition called the President's Cup. In 2003, it's the USA versus the rest of the world, and the Tiger Woods was the number 1 player in the world, and Ernie Els was the number 2 player in the world. Woods was representing the USA, Els the rest of the world. Now, after 3 days of competition, the score was 17 points each. It was a playoff. 1 player from each side, Woods and Els, number 1 and 2 in the world. And after 3 holes, high-pressure holes, they were still drawing. They couldn't separate them. So if golfers, professional golfers, are so good at dealing with pressure, why did Jack Nicklaus, the captain of the American team, and Gary Player, the captain of the rest of the world team, decide on a draw when really they want to win? Why did they decide on a draw? Because they said the immense pressure that both players were facing was too much for any one person to bear. What they found was a cheering crowd of supporters, a wonderful team that wants you to do wonderful things, can cause more pressure and cause more harm than it does good. Forget cheerleaders. Get people that you trust to give you some candid feedback, to give you a little nudge, as well as a bit of a shoulder. To give you a little nudge to just direct you and chunk things down. Because when we get things out of our heads, it's usually done more easily when there's someone there to help us get it out there.
Brilliant. Thank you, Scott. I'm also impressed that you knew something about golf there. Oh, look, we've got a little...
Yeah, I know about it. This is Emilia. This is my little shoulder.
Hi, Emilia. Your timing was incredible.
Yeah, you're offering a cup of tea. Sorry, professional. This is what is the comedy for me. This creates the good chemicals for me because she never stops. And I'm glad she doesn't. No, she's good. Are you going? Shall I politely exit stage left? Thank you.
Thank you ever so much, Scott. And we've got a hi Emilia there in the comments, so excellent.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you, Val. If anyone has questions, come through with you, and they can. I'm happy to. I'll record something, or if you've had enough, just go and have a beer or meditate. But
are you okay with me to share your contact details?
Yeah, if you put the.
Do you want to quickly tell everybody what they are?
Yeah, Scott, SCOTT, at MrEmotionalIntelligence.com. So that's MREmotionalIntelligence.com. Scott at MrEmotionalIntelligence.com. You'll also find me on LinkedIn, Scott Watson Summit. And I've put a couple of blog posts up there today. One to do with the EQI 2.0 wheel, which is the world's only scientifically validated EQ assessment. And it tells you a little bit more about it, about reality testing, about stress tolerance, about realistic optimism, self-awareness, which underpins everything emotion intelligence-wise. So if you want to pop an email through, ask a question, I may not be able to respond immediately because I might be sorting my brain chemicals out with Emilia, but I will respond.
All right.
Thanks everyone for joining me as well. It's been a joy.
Thank you everybody, and speak to you all soon. Cheers now.
Take care. See ya.